cops in rural York County, PA, get shot at and ambushed by a white male shooter. 3 cops got unalived, and two others are in critical condition. And the ironic part about this whole thing is I'm from York City, you know what I mean? And I was headed to work when all of these events unfolded and took place, and from what I could see, left and right, there was nothing but police flying past me, medical personnel. So I get on the shoulder, the side of the road, I have to let them go by and do their thing, and while I was over there on the side of the road, I said a silent prayer, hoping everything was all right. But in all actuality, knowing it wasn't. And we don't hear, Donald Trump talking about, sending the National Guard and militarized troops into these white suburban areas and these white supremacist enclaves, because truth be told, they're predominantly white, you know what I mean? And these kind of places are a breeding bed for degenerate activity and violence, you know what I mean? And York City, on the other hand, I grew up there, you know what I'm saying? And, it's a mixture of people. But when I was growing up, in the late 80s, early 90s, it was predominantly FBAs. Now the FBAs are moving out, and it's an influx of immigrants coming in, you know what I mean? And, but these rural areas, of the county ain't nothing but, white folks, you know what I mean? And we don't hear them talking about militarizing troops and taking them into these white supremacist enclaves, because like I said, they're a breeding bed for violence, and you let it been a black shooter, in a black community, the right wing would have never let us hear the last of it. They would have ran with it, used it for political traction, and not to mention they would have had the National Guard in there so fast our head would have spun. But since it happened in a rural suburban area that's predominantly white, it's written off as mental health issues, and damn that, you know what I mean? Because the white supremacists love to, attack black society and say what we ain't doing right without cleaning up the filth in their backyard. They love to keep the focus off their backyard and focus on what's going on in black society. And that's a bunch of nonsense, because truth be told, you're actually more safer, in the black community than in these white supremacist suburbs and enclaves. Like I said, they're a breeding bed for violence. You know what I mean? So I got the audio and the video of 5 cops getting shot at, 3 unalived, and, 2 are in critical condition, which is a bunch of nonsense by a white male shooter. And we're going to walk through and talk about it how we normally do. Fair use.
3 police officers. They were shot when a suspect opened fire on them as they were serving a warrant.
And we know that 2 other officers were also shot. They were critically wounded but survived. Now, a short time ago, a law enforcement source confirmed to Action News the alleged gunman is 24-year-old Matthew Ruth. This morning, Drone 6 got a first look at where all of this unfolded. This is a farmhouse in North Codorus Township.
See, these white male shooters be shooting up people left and right, willy-nilly, with reckless abandonment. Truth be told, these white supremacist enclaves are a breeding bed for violence and these mass shooters, you know what I mean? And you don't hear, the right talking about that, or anybody, none of these white supremacists talking about that. They love to focus on what's going on in black society without having their own backyard cleaned up. And let's continue.
The suspect was shot and killed by police.
Action News reporter Catherine Scott has the very latest.
Today, authorities are looking for evidence in multiple locations as this investigation continues. Today, Drone 6 was over the farmhouse and fields in North Codorus Township, where 5 officers were shot yesterday as police were serving a warrant. 3 of the officers died, the other 2 taken to the hospital in critical but stable condition.
Then I heard another narrative by our governor of PA. He was talking about mental health issues, this, that, and the other. If it would have been a black male shooter and happened in a black community, him shooting officers, they would have ran with it for political gain and traction, you know what I mean? And they would have never let us live it down. They would have had the militarized troops inside of, our community so fast our head would have spent, but since it happened, in a white supremacist enclave suburb, it's written off as mental health issues. And if it was a black person, shooting up cops like that, willy-nilly, he would have been the worst thing since birth. But let's continue.
This is an absolutely tragic and devastating day for York County and for the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Last night, as police and emergency vehicles formed a procession to the coroner's office, people stood silently and together on the streets of York County, some with their hands on their hearts, others holding flags to honor the fallen officers.
Once I heard this procession was happening and decided just to come down, just to, pay my respects. These police officers go to work every day not knowing whether they're going to come home or not.
Authorities say the officers were following up on a domestic-related investigation from the day before. Police say the gunman was fatally shot by the officers.
There was so many gunshots I couldn't begin to tell you how many it was. It was just a total pandemonium.
Pennsylvania State Police have taken over calls for service in York County.
There are simply no words that I can offer to assuage the grief that this community has experienced and unfortunately will continue to experience. The grief will be unbearable, but we will bear it.
A lot of questions remain today. We expect to learn more information throughout the day. From the Satellite Center, Catherine Scott, Channel 6.
But like I said, family, you're actually safer in the black community than in these white supremacist suburbs and enclave. We don't got, degenerate activity going on like that. You're safer in the black community, and the white supremacists love to focus on what's going on in black society without having their backyard cleaned up. So what I'll say to the white supremacists is clean your backyard up before you talk about what's going on in black society. And I want to say, rest easy to those officers. Just my thoughts on the matter. Peace.